Meeting of the Washington State Redistricting Commission. I'm going to pause for just a few minutes as we wait for all of the commissioners to arrive. The State Redistricting Commission, I want to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us this morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin with a roll call. I am Sarah Augustine, and I am serving as the chair. Commissioner April Sims.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good to see you. Commissioner Paul Graves.
Present.
Thank you. Good to see you. Commissioner Brady Walkinshaw.
Present. Nice to see everyone this morning.
Good morning. Good to see you. And Commissioner Joe Fain.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to hear you this morning. All right. So as I said before, I'm Sarah Augustine. I'm presiding today from the city of Yakima, which is on the ceded territory of the Confederated Bands and Tribes of the Yakima Nation. I'm going to introduce myself this morning. I'm seeing you all many of you for the first time. I'm the executive director of the Dispute Resolution Center of Yakima and Kittitas counties. And like all members of this historic commission, I'm a working person. I want to begin this morning by talking a little bit about the mandate of the commission. The mandate of the commission, which is set out in the Washington State Redistricting Act, is to accomplish state legislative and congressional redistricting in accordance with the Washington State Constitution. The bipartisan commission was created to listen to the public every 10 years so that districts would be drawn with an understanding of what's working and what needs to change. I will do my best to ensure that the public is fully included so that members of communities across Washington can voice their interests and so that the commission can make fully informed decisions on behalf of us all. I want to note that I understand that not everyone in our communities across Washington have access to the internet in our COVID reality. We will seek creative ways to ensure that every voice can be heard. My role as the chair of the commission is to articulate and manage the commission's process. In my role as chair, I will ensure that the process is as participatory, fair, equitable, and transparent as possible. I also want to talk about the role of the bipartisan commissioners. The 4 voting commissioners have power and responsibility to vote, ultimately creating and adopting a redistricting plan. Voting commissioners will make decisions that will create maps to best represent the interests of Washingtonians. Commissioners, I understand that each of you brings passion and enthusiasm to your role. I will chair a process to give each of you the opportunity to share your perspectives and to deeply listen to each other in order to make good decisions. You will not always agree, but I will ask each of you to engage in productive disagreement where our discussions and deliberations move the process forward. I also want to just make a brief note to the public. Those of you that are joining us from the public today, welcome. It's my goal to engage communities across Washington as fully as I can and to hear and address your concerns and requests. Please bear with me as I learn what we as a commission have the power to address. Throughout our tenure as commissioners, we will hear the public comments that are important. Ideas, requests, and some even injustices may fall outside our ability to effectively respond. There are issues you may bring forward in your public comments that we may not be able to address. We can listen to you and be sure to capture your thoughts, questions, and requests. I will do my best to synthesize these and we will respond to them as we're able. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we do have jurisdiction. Where we don't, I will do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond more effectively. This is not the first meeting of the 2021 commission. However, it is the first meeting of the full commission, including myself as chair. I would like to invite the commissioners at this time to introduce yourselves. I'm going to call on you in an order that I've devised to make sure we all have a chance to speak this morning. And when I call on you, I wonder if you would just be willing to introduce yourself briefly And I know you've done this before, but just for the record, to introduce yourselves again. So I want to begin with Commissioner Sims.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Augustine, and good morning, everyone. So good to see you all again. I'm April Sims. I use she, her pronouns. I am joining you from the traditional land of the First People of Tacoma, the Puyallup tribe. I want to honor with deep respect and gratitude their elders, past and present, for their stewardship of this land and its people. Mine is a legacy of stolen people on stolen land, so I raise my voice in the fight for Black liberation and the movement for Black lives. Thank you. I currently serve in my day job as Secretary Treasurer of the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. It is the largest labor organization in Washington, representing more than 600 locals and affiliates and over 500,000 workers all across the state of Washington. And it is a privilege to serve on this redistricting commission with all of you and with my fellow commissioners. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Graves, I wonder if you'd be willing to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Madam Chair. We're really excited to have you on board and see you chairing this meeting today. It really is great to have a full commission and to kick off our work for the year. I'm Paul Graves. I served as state representative from East King County from 2017 to 2019. I'm a lawyer by trade. In my day job, I'm in-house counsel for a family-owned trucking company based in Auburn. And I've devoted a lot of my pro bono life as a lawyer to representing foster kids in trial courts. For my work, I was named the Pro Bono Lawyer of the Year by King County's leading foster youth advocacy organization. And doing that work really reminds you of how important it is to listen to the most vulnerable and to speak up when they don't have a voice for themselves. And I'm hoping that we'll have a chance to do things like this as we draw these maps and do this important job this year. So thanks very much and excited to be here.
Thank you. Commissioner Walkinshaw, I wonder if you would introduce yourself, please.
I'm very happy to. Thank you, Commissioner Augustine. Super excited to have you on board and delighted to be here with everybody. I'm Brady Pinheiro Walkinshaw. I use he, him pronouns. I'm joining you from the unceded land of the Duwamish people. I am here in Seattle. I'm a former Washington State legislator and originally actually from Whatcom County, from what's currently the 42nd legislative district. Now live in the 43rd legislative district, which I had the privilege of representing in Olympia for a number of years. I currently am the chief executive officer of the national environmental publication and media nonprofit called grist.org, which works on issues related to narrative, storytelling, journalism, to solving the climate crisis. So that's my day job. I am delighted to be here with all my fellow commissioners and looking forward to the work that we have ahead. So thank you very, very much. And delighted that some more people are joining us in the audience today too. And thanks for spending some of your Sunday morning with us.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Fain, I wonder if you would be willing to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, good morning. I'm Joe Fain. I was a state senator from the 47th District in South King County for 8 years. Now I'm president and CEO of the Bellevue Chamber. I'm very excited about being part of this commission. This is a very important role. I'm also very excited that we were able to come together and select a chair at our last meeting, and are very pleased that we're all here together today and to do this important work. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we do have a very full agenda today, and to those of you on the commission and others that are joining us today, just to let you know, this meeting will be very carefully facilitated in order to get through a really busy agenda. The first work that we have to do today is the approval of minutes. Our first action is to approve the meeting minutes from the meeting held on January 30, 2021. So I will ask that one of you make a motion, and another to second the motion to adopt these minutes. Then I'll provide an opportunity for discussion and then call for a vote. So is there, yes.
Second.
Great. Calling for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, terrific. So
Commissioner Augustine, can I raise one question with you?
sure.
And we could go either way on this. I just was noting it for maybe for future meetings if it doesn't make sense for this one, but I was curious if I see that we have public comment on the agenda after we take action on a set of items. And I think maybe some folks, like related to the job announcement for the executive director, people may want to make comment before we take action. I'm just curious if fellow commissioners would like to move the public comment portion of the agenda to before the action portion. We can also leave it as is. I just wanted to bring it up if we would like to move the public comment to before the action portion of the agenda.
Terrific. So there is a proposal on the table to move the public comment. Others, we just hear from you if this is something that you would like to consider, Commissioner Sims.
Yeah, I mean, I think that seems perfectly reasonable. It looks like the public comment section is slated for after all of our discussion and action, and there might be some input from the public that would help us in specifically around the executive director position.
Okay, great. Commissioner Graves?
I think it's probably right. So right now it's item number 5 on the agenda. Maybe we would just switch it with item number 4 so it goes up before the action. Makes sense to me.
Terrific. Commissioner Fain?
That sounds reasonable.
All right, terrific. So that's fine with me. We will move the public comment to item number 4. And I do want to say that in terms of our discussion items today, those are not action items. Those are just items for discussion. So it makes sense that we would have public comment before we took action on our action items today. All right, so I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you now so that we can just move through this process a little more carefully. All right. The third item on our agenda today contains issues for discussion, and my hope is that in discussion we can move these issues forward so we can take action on them in a future meeting very soon. Today's meeting is a special meeting, and as such, we will only take action or vote on action items. Our work in the discussion portion of the agenda is to develop agreements about how to move these discussion items forward. So I began, as you know, as each of you know, in discussion with each of you individually so that we can further define our purpose and values. I ask each of you to articulate the purpose of our work together and the values that guide you in your participation as a commissioner. I've identified common themes among the values that each of you articulated, and they're shown here on the screen. And so the reason that I've done this is I want to reiterate these in every one of our meetings so that we can remember what it is that we care about together. And so I want to begin with just the values that you've articulated around the process. Each one of you has voiced commitment to an open, transparent, and credible process, that there will be access provided to everyone and all voices will be welcome, and that the process will be grounded in the statute. You've also talked about how you want to be together with a spirit of transparency in your work among each other and your communication together, that commissioners will participate and negotiate in good faith. And I want to talk a little bit about what good faith is. Good faith is keeping an open mind, working hard to listen, and to avoid using statements or words that would intentionally trigger someone else. So you've all voiced a willingness and a commitment to participate and negotiate in good faith together. You've also committed to collaborating and cooperating together. And each of you has voiced a commitment to being respectful and civil together. In terms of the purpose that you articulated, that each of you articulated in common, the purpose of our work together, you voiced meeting our deadline actually developing a plan and maps together by the appropriate time to produce the best possible maps, and that the outcome, the plan and the maps are credible to everyone. So these are the things that you voiced is your intention. So I want to ask at this time, this is just for discussion, what would you like to add? And I'm going to call on each of you and just ask this question. So Commissioner Graves, are there items you'd like to add?
This looks pretty good. I mean, this includes, the things that when we and I talked, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to each of us about how this is all going to work. I want to make sure that this is a process that we're obviously going to follow Open Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Act and be open and transparent to the public. I think we're going to be talking a little bit later about doing a lot of public outreach and a lot of public meetings, such as we can during a pandemic. And I want to make sure that we're doing that throughout, because at the end of the day, we're not just drawing maps, we're working through a process that needs to be credible to people who are Democrats, Republicans, independents, and others. I probably don't need to tell all of you, these are conspiratorial times. And the best way I've found to fight conspiracy is to be really open and available to hear what people care about, and to let people know that while we can't promise anything in particular when it comes to what these maps are going to look like at the end of the day, I think we'll get a much better result, and we'll have a much more likely opportunity to convince the public this was done fairly if we're open, and the public can see that we're being open. And that's the public side of it. And then, there are 4 of us, and we have to have at least 3 of us vote to approve this map. And it's a explicitly partisan process with 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And partisanship often creates stupidity, and I'd like to avoid that where we can. So I'm at least promising here to work in good faith. To I'll have strong feelings and particular stands, but I want to make sure that that I'm doing it in a way that is fair, and that at the end of the day can seem credible even to those who might not agree with me politically.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So I will next ask Commissioner Walkinshaw, are there items that you would like to add?
I echo what my colleague Paul Graves shared. I agree with, I really appreciate your taking the time to talk with all of us over the last couple of weeks and putting this together. On the process, this access to everyone notion, I think that's extraordinarily important, along with the openness and the transparency and the credibility. We've had a lot of requests. I think we're going to get a lot of requests coming in for ways we make that access to everyone happen. And I think that'll be an important body of work that the executive director for the commission takes on, and working with you and figuring out the best way to do this during COVID. We've also had, I do want to lift up the request we've also had come in from tribal nations and tribal people to think about how it is that we're engaging tribes in a really thoughtful way over the course of this year. So I think those are some pieces I just wanted to note. And as we think about access, thinking about translation services, thinking about connectivity and access to broadband and internet, so that folks are able to participate in the fullest of ways. I'm also particularly excited to find ways that we can engage with young people in this process. I think that there could be some really creative ways to work with future voters, people who will enter the voting population and be impacted by our maps over the course of the next 10 years, but aren't yet there. So that's something else that I have an interest in, and agree with the notions you've brought up about how we work with one another transparently and respectfully and directly. And of course, at the end of the day, to meet the outcome that we've put forth here, which is maps that best represent the people of the state.
Terrific, thank you. Thanks for your comments. Commissioner Fain, are there items that you would like to add?
I just want to say I really appreciate that you wanted to go through this exercise, and that you called each of the commissioners and asked our input. And I feel like you did a great job of capturing what you and I discussed on the program, on the phone. So I think this is a great list, and I echo all the other commissioners' comments that outreach is made particularly difficult at a time when um, folks are mostly staying at home, and we're not able to really take it on the road and do in-person work. And a lot of individuals don't have access to the technology that makes it easy to engage with us. And so we're gonna have to work a little extra hard to make sure that we've been able to reach out to especially those individuals in the community that that don't have a voice and have a much more difficult time accessing a process like this. So I feel like all the commissioners are up to that task, and appreciate your leadership in bringing this forward.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sims, I wonder if you have anything to add.
Well, I mean, I could ditto what my fellow commissioners all said. I think, Sarah, I appreciate your, starting our meeting, grounding us in this conversation, and thinking about our process and desired outcomes. I think it's really helpful in terms of guiding our work moving forward. I do, we're all, thinking about how we make an open, transparent, and credible process happen. And just, I think there are opportunities with our budget, given that we're not traveling, that we might have some additional resources that, we can think about how we create a system that is working to not just identify potential barriers to participation, but to actively remove them, whether those barriers are financial or emotional or intellectual. So I think we've got, a lot of opportunity to learn from the commissions of our past, and, really think about how we set up a process that ensures the public has an opportunity to influence and impact the decisions that we'll be making together as a commission. So just want to lift that up, and I'm excited to get to work. So thank you. I will also add, though, I'm feeling a little anxious around outcome number 1, which is to meet the deadline. And I'm looking forward to a conversation about how we do that given the delayed census data. So thank you.
Terrific. Okay, and so thank you each for affirming what is listed here. And so what I want to do is let you know that this is what I'm going to hold. I will remind us of our intentions in every single meeting. And as we're working towards negotiations, these are the ideals that I'm going to hold up and remind you that these are our agreements. All right. The next item that I hope we can discuss today is a response to the National Women's Political Caucus of Washington for commission action. I'm sorry, excuse me. I've missed a step here. So I hope we can now discuss the commission code of conduct. So there's a proposal on the table for this commission to adopt a code of conduct, and each of you has voiced support for adopting a code of conduct. 2 drafts based upon the legislature's codes of conduct have been routed for your review. These drafts have been posted, and I'd like to ask now that we identify a process to create and adopt a code of conduct. First, I'm going to ask each of you to comment on the drafts that have been circulated, and then I will ask each of you to propose a process for arriving at a final code. So this is not an action item. It's not our job to adopt a code of conduct today. We just want to identify a process and perhaps a timeline so we can figure out when we're going to adopt it. So here's an example of a process. You could each send your proposals to me, and I can incorporate your input into a draft that you could review for action in our next meeting. So I'm going to do a round and ask each of you, what are your comments about the proposed drafts? Hopefully you've each had a chance to take a look at those. And then we'll do a second round, your proposals for a process. So the first person that I will ask is Commissioner Walkinshaw. So you may notice I'm going in an order so that in each comment period, a different commissioner has the opportunity to go first. So Commissioner Walkinshaw, I wonder first, do you have comments about the proposed drafts?
Thank you, Commissioner Augustine. Do you want me to speak to A and B or just to A?
Just A.
Okay. I appreciate all the work that's gone into them. I generally feel like we should adopt something that is similar to something that's already existed, whether it's what the legislature has worked on in the past or something akin to that. I think all the drafts are going in that direction. And the last thing I'll say on drafts is I I know that a couple of them have specifically kind of identified how we resolve violations of the code of conduct. I think it's important that we have a process in whatever we finally adopt to kind of address, if violations of it come up, how we address them. So that's all I'll say.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Fain, do you have comments on the proposed drafts?
I was the one that asked staff to adapt the legislative code of conduct to commission business, and it was probably a lot of search and replace the key terms of legislature or Senate to redistricting committee. So there may be some more specialized analysis and changes, given that we're not a legislative branch entity. But in general, I think there is unanimity around the belief that every state agency, every public sector agency should have a code of conduct for all of its employees. And so I think we'll be able to move forward.
Great, thank you. Next is Commissioner Sims. If you do you have comments about the proposed drafts?
Yeah, I think we also submitted a draft code of conduct that was really based on the legislative code of conduct. I think there was a lot of research and a lot of work that went into creating that. And I think there's good language in there that would work for our commission. I think I might have added some additional language based on the code of conduct that we have at the Washington State Labor Council and at the National AFL-CIO. And just think that grounding each commission meeting and reminding folks of the code of conduct is a good practice to adopt. I think some outstanding questions, and these have already been raised, is, where are violations to the code reported, who has authority and the ability to conduct an investigation, just how are these issues resolved when they're brought up, I think is outstanding given the unique nature of our commission. So I think we need to do some work around identifying those questions and working hard to answer them, but appreciate that we have a couple of drafts to work from and think that we'll be able to come up with something concrete for our work moving forward.
Great. Commissioner Graves, do you have comments about the drafts that are circulated?
I do. Do I have this right? I think they're both, because at the state legislature level, there is, for reasons that I'm still not entirely clear about, there's a code of conduct for the House of Representatives and a code of conduct for the Senate. And as I saw the two that were sent around from you, Sarah, it looked like they were kind of both loosely based on those, but maybe had some changes to them.
That's my understanding also. And I do want to note here that Commissioner Sims, I worked with your staff. I believe I spoke with your staff even on Friday, and I don't think I saw a draft from you. So I'm glad we're having this conversation because I certainly didn't circulate it, and that is probably an oversight on my part. I'm sorry about that. So we do have more work there to circulate additional drafts. But you're right, Commissioner Graves, the two that I sent are based, they appeared to me to be based on the House and the Senate codes of conduct.
Okay, that's what it looked like to me. They seemed a little bit different, but close enough, especially with the section headings and the key things to have in there. It so happens that I was one of the representatives who sat on a pretty big committee that came up with those, with the code of conduct for the House Representatives, and probably won't surprise you that I'm pretty proud of it, and I think it's a good one. It hits the main principles that any good code of conduct should have. It has a clear definition of what qualifies as a violation of the code of conduct. It has a clear statement about respect and expectations for respect. Any code of conduct needs to have a really clear path for anybody who has been the subject of a violation or has seen the subject of a violation to be able to report not only to a direct superior, but to others outside the chain of command. And then it needs to have some really clear statements, both about how any complaints will be handled, and especially some statements about confidentiality and the fact that there can be no promise of that, but that there can be confidentiality to the extent allowed. Those kind of principles should be in any code of conduct. I think they're in both the House and the Senate, but I think that those are really good starting places, both because they have all those things that should be in a good code of conduct, but also because there are particularities for codes of conduct with public organizations like ours that are just a little bit different than they are in like a private workplace. So I think they both have everything that we could want in there if we adopted either of them today, which we're not going to do. But if we did, that would probably be sufficient. But I think that it's probably worth spending a little bit more time and giving a little bit more thought to both the uniqueness of this commission itself, and then also the fact that we're going to be operating most of this year through a pandemic and remotely, which probably calls for some thought about how to address some peculiarities related to that.
Great. All right, thank you. So our next step is to identify a process to create a code of conduct and then to adopt that code of conduct. So I am now asking for your thoughts about creating that process. And I'm going to begin with Commissioner Sims. Your thoughts about a proposal for a process.
Yes, thank you. And I do want to check in because it looks like we sent you the email with our draft on Friday at about 10:30. So I'm wondering if maybe there's a problem with the email system, but would definitely want to make sure that our draft is, forwarded to the rest of the commissioners for consideration.
Yeah, and it was most likely just an oversight on my part. I apologize for that. We're still in the process, so how shall we identify a draft together?
No need to apologize. I'll just make sure that I'll resend it and make sure that it's forwarded to the rest of the commissioners. But I think in terms of a proposal process, what I would love to recommend is that you maybe take the drafts that you have and come up with a draft for us to review and vote on at the following meeting, at an upcoming meeting. If you have the time and capacity to take that on, I think it would be great for you to just compile what you've received so far and give us a document to work from.
You bet. Okay, thank you for that proposal. Commissioner Graves?
I think that's right. Again, these are both of the state and the House, or the Senate and the House codes of conduct went through a pretty thorough drafting process in the first place with, I should be clear too, it wasn't just legislators who were on the committees that wrote those, it was staff, it was the clerk, and the secretary of the Senate, it was lobbyists and members of the public who were involved. So there was a good amount of thought put into how those were drafted and ultimately approved. I think they're really good places to start, and I would feel totally comfortable, Madam Chair, if you had the inclination to take them, either combine them or just kind of pick one or the other, maybe make a few proposed revisions as you see them. I guess maybe this might be a question for Tara, for our assigned Attorney General. If we're going to have like one document that gets circulated to all of us, and then we have the opportunity to maybe redline some revisions if we want to, how can we best handle that in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Act?
I'm going to take a look at that a little more carefully. I think we can't take final action except at a public meeting. And so deliberations also need to generally occur at the public meeting. So I'm just going to take a closer look at that and then give some advice on that after I've had a chance to review.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, so subject to that, I'd be perfectly fine if you wanted to take a stab at a draft that we maybe at our next meeting could publicly discuss and hopefully approve and finalize.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Walkinshaw?
I agree with what both commissioners have said before me.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Fain?
I think that makes sense.
All right, thank you. So the process that we've identified, and it sounds we're in agreement, is that I will take the drafts that have been created. There are 3, and create a draft with all of the elements of those, with maybe some revisions where there's repetition, et cetera, and provide that to each of you for your deliberation at our next meeting. All right, thank you. So I want to move on to our next discussion item. Our next item for discussion is a response to the National Women's Political Caucus of Washington, their request for commission action. So an open letter published by the National Women's Political Caucus of Washington was posted on Tuesday, February 9th. This letter calls on the commission to develop and adopt a robust code of conduct. There is a proposal on the table to issue a response to the caucus. First, I'll ask if you agree or disagree that the commission should issue a response to the caucus. And then I will ask for your thoughts on a process. If you agree that we should, then I will ask for your thoughts on a process for how to do that. So I'm going to begin with Commissioner Graves. And first, I just want to know, do you agree or disagree that we should issue a response to this body?
You're asking about issue a written response?
Yes, that's the proposal on the table, that we will respond to the caucus. The proposal didn't say whether it would be written, but that's my assumption, yes.
Maybe I'm missing something here. I mean, if I had to write the letter asked, for example, things like any of us commissioners being unable to talk to Commissioner Fain directly. I mean, are we talking about trying to say we agree with this point, but we don't agree with that point? I don't.
Not at all. The open letter, as I read it, asked many things of various bodies, but the only request they made to our commission was to adopt a robust code of conduct. So in my read, and I could hear from others, that would be the only item that we would respond to. That was the only thing they asked of this commission. So the proposal on the table is for us to respond to the caucus, the Women's Caucus, for the portion that they directed towards this commission.
Are we talking about the same letter? The letter demanded for resignation, and it demanded a requirement that Commissioner Fain be unable to speak to any member of the public or any other commissioner one-on-one.
Right, and so we're not at all deliberating whether we should do those things. Right now, the proposal on the table is simply that we would issue a response to this caucus. The first question is, do you want to issue a response? Yes or no? The next item, from my point of view, just to clarify with you, Commissioner Graves, is that open letter calls for all kinds of things. And the only thing it calls on the commission, the only action it asks of the commission, is to adopt a robust code of conduct. So from my point of view, the only thing we would respond to them is about that robust code of conduct. They ask the Senate to do various things, et cetera. But to this body, that was my read. So I'm very interested to hear if others have a different understanding.
Well, if that's the clarification, and I'll tell you right now, I think we might be looking at different letters, because the letter I read called for not just other people to do things, but for the commission itself to do a variety of things that we can't do legally, and that would make it impossible to do this job. If you're asking, should we put out a statement saying we're going to have a really world-class code of conduct? Sure.
Well, the first thing I'm asking, really, because there's a proposal on the table, all I'm asking at this point is, do you want to issue a response? So then so item A is, will we issue a response as the commission? We could choose not to answer it at all. Or do we want to issue a response? That's really what we're asking. Then item B is, how will we develop a response?
I don't really know how to distinguish those two things, because if what I'm hearing, and again, we might be talking about different letters, because the one I've seen calls for far more than that. But if there's a letter saying the commission should adopt a strong code of conduct, and we're talking about issuing a response saying we've been asked to issue a strong code of conduct, we completely agree we should have a strong code of conduct, then I'm all for that. But if there's some other kind of response that we're talking about, I don't know how to distinguish the agree or disagree from the proposal for the process.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. The first item really asking is, do you want to respond to this body? Because it's certainly within our power to choose not to respond. That was really my first question. So it's,
I'm all for saying that we should have a really strong code of conduct and making that public.
okay, great. Commissioner Walkinshaw.
Yeah, I actually share some of the questions that Commissioner Graves brought up just about the specifics of what we'd be responding to. I have shared, and I mean, I'll let Commissioner Sims speak to kind of her perspective on this, but I have shared jointly, I've shared my own perspective with the letter from the National Women's Caucus, which I don't think is, I might be mistaken, but I don't think it's something that the four of us would probably agree on jointly. However, I certainly feel comfortable if the four of us are in agreement around a code of conduct, which it seems like we are, to share that. But I do think there were a set of other issues that were raised in the letter, similar to what Commissioner Graves had said. So if we reach consensus as a group of us on a response, I would certainly be for it, but this may also be a place where there might be, I don't know that there would be consensus to issue a joint response to the letter that I saw, that I think we're referring to.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do, I've just pulled up the letter and I'm going to read to you I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I'm going to read to you the portions of where they're calling for things. So the first portion says, we strongly urge the commissioners to quickly develop and adopt a robust code of conduct to ensure safe and respectful place for the public, staff, and commissioners. That's the request. Then further on, they say, our foremost ask is that the commissioner resign from the Washington State Redistricting Commission and request the following of the Washington Senate Republican Caucus. Then they list their request for the Republican Caucus. So to my mind, that is not a request for our commission. That is a request to the Washington Senate Republican Caucus. The only request that I see for the commission is to adopt a code of conduct. So if that's really what I'm asking, if you want to respond. Yes, Commissioner Graves.
But one of the things listed there is that Commissioner Fain shall have no in-person access to other commissioners. I mean, maybe the Senate Republicans have the power to do that. I'm fairly confident they don't under the law. It would be, you could imagine that being a complete disaster of this process if any of the caucuses were allowed to appoint somebody and then say, by the way, you can't talk to anybody else. So I don't read it the same way.
Okay, certainly. And so so at this point, do you have a proposal, Commissioner Graves? So you could propose, for example, that we not issue a response, and that would be fine.
Well, how about this? Let's issue a response that says, as we read this letter, the only thing it calls on the commission to do is adopt a robust code of conduct. We all agree that we're going to do that, and we'll probably plan on doing it by our next meeting.
Okay, so then I'm going to continue on to Commissioner Sims and ask for your response. Do you want to issue a response? And I'm not really asking what that response would be, but rather how would we then, as a group, generate our response?
Yeah, I appreciate how difficult this part of the meeting is to facilitate and understand, the concerns I think that Commissioner Graves raised, and to Brady's point. So I think that we just had a conversation and identified priorities of our commission that included, being open and transparent. I think that we have a letter that was addressed to this commission and was signed by more than 200 individuals, and that we as a commission should craft some sort of response. I think my reading of the letter is similar to your reading of the letter, and that the request for this commission is that we adopt a robust code of conduct, and we just engaged in a conversation and have identified a process to make that happen. So I think it's appropriate for us to send a response based on the request of this letter that we are planning to adopt a code of conduct. And I know that's not the information you were looking for, but it just feels like we're having a conversation about what else should be included in the response. And I think, we've got community organizations and women rights group asking us to create a code of conduct, and we are being responsive to that request. And, some sort of response feels appropriate to me.
All right. Commissioner Graves, I see your hand. I want to just give Commissioner Fain an opportunity to respond, and then I will call on you next. So Commissioner Fain, I want to hear your thoughts as well. Should we issue a response to the National Women's Caucus and a process for how to do that?
Well, I think Commissioner Sims and Commissioner Graves are in somewhat saying the same thing about it seems that there's support for a code of conduct that crosses party lines here. So if that is the nature of the request, then once we've adopted the code of conduct, we should send it and let the code of conduct speak for itself. That's my feeling on that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Graves.
Yeah, I was going to ask along those lines. I mean, if we're going to, again, this is a kind of a combination of agree or disagree and a proposal for the process, but I mean, are we going to be specifically saying this was a letter that was sent and this is our response? And if so, under what other circumstances are we going to plan on doing this through the process? I think the clever folks over at the State Republican Party could probably get a couple hundred signatures on a letter to demand us to do something. Are we going to start responding to every letter we get from partisan organizations calling on us to do various things, especially if it's things that we're going to do anyway?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that question. And I want to tell you a little bit about our process, or I should say the process that I identified for this meeting specifically. I asked each of you to let me know proposals that you had that you wanted this commission to consider and discuss. So this was a proposal on the table to make a response to this statement. And so from my point of view, any commissioner could say, here's a statement and I would like the commission to make a response. And then the commission decides, yes, we will, or no, we won't make a response, and then figures out a process for how to do that. So that if you want to create some boundaries around what a commissioner can bring forward, we can do that also.
It seems like an invitation to much mischief in the future to me, but so I guess my thought on all this is that if you all are all reading this letter to just say all it's asking us to do is issue a strong code of conduct, then let's just issue a strong code of conduct at our next meeting and move on.
Okay, so Commissioner Graves, I'm hearing from you that you would at this point choose not to issue a direct response, but just rather to adopt the code of conduct. Is that right?
With the understanding that I think we now have agreement, I think, from this group that all that letter does is ask for us to adopt a code of conduct. Do we all agree on that?
So let me ask. So Commissioner Walkinshaw, is that what you understand from that letter?
I guess I would say the way that if we're looking at the same letter, which I think we are, I just pulled it up right now. I agree with what Commissioner Graves said earlier. I read this letter as asking the commission for more than just a code of conduct. That's how I read it. So if we have the opportunity to talk about the content and the substance of it, and we agree on that as a commission, then I feel like it's okay to issue a response collectively. But I actually read it as asking for more than just a code of conduct from the commission, which I think is what Commissioner Graves was saying. So if we reached consensus on how we would respond to it, then I'm quite okay with issuing a response. But if we don't reach consensus on responding to it, I'm also okay not responding, if that makes sense. Not responding as a commission collectively.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the proposal on the table is that is for the commission to respond to this open letter to make a response to the National Women's Caucus. And it sounds to me at this time as though we have some more work to do. And I think part of that work is to clarify and reach agreement of what we're being asked to do. And so I think that will probably merit additional conversation. And because we have so much work to do today, and we have action items that we need to get to, I'm going to suggest at this time that we hold further discussion about this. And perhaps it might even be useful to have a special meeting that would just be about this, so we can commit the time that we need to hold that discussion. Yeah, Commissioner Graves, I see that you have a response to that.
I think that would be a poor use of our time. I mean, at that point, we'd be doing a special meeting to discuss whether to respond to something from one group. I think that would be a poor idea.
Okay, so then now I will take proposals for how you want to move forward.
I propose we issue a very strong code of conduct that we're all behind.
Okay, so I take that to mean, Commissioner Graves, that you don't want to make a direct response. You just simply want to develop the code of conduct, and that would be the response. We wouldn't write a response directly to this caucus.
Well, given that it doesn't sound like we even have agreement about what the letter itself was asking us to do, I think that's probably the wisest course.
Okay, great. So then I'm going to ask others of you to respond to that. Commissioner Walkinshaw, your thoughts in response to Commissioner Graves' proposal?
Yeah, I think kind of letter aside, independently, I think we should absolutely go forward with the plan we just made about issuing a strong code of conduct. And I think we outlined a really great process for that I think it sounds like the four of us agree on, which is great. So I think we should absolutely do that. I think there's a separate question about the substance of the letter, and if that's something this group wants to spend more time talking about, we can. I'm open to it, but I also agree with what Commissioner Graves said, that we want to focus on some other aspects of the work as well. So I'm open to that, but I think that we don't have a shared understanding of what the letter's asking for at this point. So I definitely think we should issue a strong code of conduct at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Fain?
I would agree with the previous commissioners. Actions speak louder than words. The request is for a code of conduct. We all agree that one should be issued. We should do that, and then move on to the work that the state expects us to complete in a very truncated timeline. And we should stay focused on those objectives.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sims?
Well, it sounds to me that there may be general consensus that the response is the code of conduct. And if that's what I'm hearing from my fellow commissioners, then I think that's reasonable.
Great, thank you. And so I want to say that I recognize this is a challenging conversation and congratulate you in participating in a really good way in this conversation. So my understanding is that our process at this time is to develop our code of conduct, and that will serve as our response. Thank you. Thank you for engaging in this conversation. The next item for us to discuss today is the commission's parameters for AG counsel. So the commission has been assigned counsel from the Attorney General's office, and the commission's counsel has asked the commission to provide protocols for receiving legal advice related to the commission. There's a proposal on the table as follows. So any of the four politically appointed commissioners could seek 1 hour's worth of legal advice per month, with more time requiring sign off from at least 3 commissioners. The chair or executive director, which has not been hired yet, could seek 3 hours worth of legal advice per month, with more time requiring sign off from at least 3 commissioners. So my first question for you is, do you agree or disagree to this proposal? If you disagree, I'm going to ask for your amendments. And then finally, proposed timeline for the action. So again, this is a discussion item, so we're not trying to take action on it today. Really, I just want to know if this is a proposal that you want to push forward in our next meeting to take action on. And so I will begin with Commissioner Fain.
Excellent. So I think there probably is a lot more discussion to go into this one because I'm not certain how I guess I need to be more educated on how this has occurred in the past, and you know, who is the client, so to speak. And so is there an opportunity for individual caucuses to make a request for additional time, or is there going to be a flexible budget for either individual commissioners or individual caucuses to make requests, not just of a legal nature, but any other types of expenses? And so I think it is a little bit part of a broader conversation about the individual flexibility that commissioners have to seek outside advice. But in general, I don't have any opposition to what's proposed here. I just think that we should make this part of a broader conversation about our overall budget.
Great. So I wonder, Tara, if you would be willing to give some background at this time, just so we can have a more robust conversation.
Sure. And I just wanted to take an opportunity right now to introduce Emma Grunberg, who is also a Deputy Solicitor General and on the call, and so that she could introduce herself to all of you. As for the background of this, it was the last time around, it was 10 years ago. And so my understanding is it was relatively ad hoc. There was some requirement for legal advice from the commissioners generally at the very start when the agency was being stood up. But then most of the legal advice, in my understanding, came usually from the executive director. And so there was quite a bit of legal advice, but it was generally about things like contracts and routine commission business rather than very specific. So I can get a little more detail on all that and provide that, but that's my understanding of the general background of it.
Great. Commissioner Sims? I'm asking first if you agree or disagree with the proposal, or perhaps you'd like to have more conversation.
I'm not entirely sure I agree with the proposal. I guess, my question is what's driving this? Is this driven by budget? Is this just driven by previous process? I serve on the Washington State Apprenticeship and Training Council. We have an AAG that's assigned to our council, and we've never limited the council members' access to the AAG for legal advice, just because I think we would benefit as a commission to make sure that all commissioners feel like they are appropriately, honoring their oath and doing the important work of the commission. So I don't know for sure that I have an amendment, just some outstanding questions.
Great, thank you. And so just to answer your question, the reason this is on our agenda is because council asked for us to place it on the agenda so that we would have this discussion. That is the reason it's on the agenda. And I believe each of us received the email asking what our process would be and asking for us to discuss and articulate what we wanted to do going forward. So next I will call on Commissioner Graves for your response to the proposal.
Thanks very much. I think I might have even thrown out these numbers, which I just picked off the top of my head. And I think what I had in mind was, and this is where it could be useful to know exactly what happened 10 years ago. We might not be able to. I can see a situation, because ours is a little bit different than some other commissions where most everybody's kind of swimming in the same direction. And so it could be, it's not that big of a deal to go to an assigned AAG and ask for some help. I could just see a situation, because this is an explicitly partisan body, that we get into some dumb tussle about one or the other of us spending too much time with our AAG, who has, or two of them who have plenty of other important things to be doing too. So I think I threw these numbers kind of ad hoc, but mostly as just a way to I had in mind a process where for stuff that's pretty relatively informal, any of us could go and just make a phone call or ask for a little bit of work, but that if it was going to be something that was going to take more time away from our assigned counsel, that we need to have a little bit more support for doing that. And then I think it's probably true also that we're going to need probably a little bit more thought as well into privilege issues. I can see situations where one commissioner wants to ask some particular questions, but doesn't want them to be disclosed, or wants to get candid legal advice, and whether that kind of advice is itself privileged and under what circumstances it would be confidential. I think those are things that I haven't thought through enough, but that would be worth our time to do, so we just know the answer ahead of time.
Great, thank you. All right, and so Commissioner Walkinshaw, your thoughts about the proposal on the table?
I'm really open to this. I, agreed a bit with what Commissioner Sims shared. I was trying to understand why we needed this, but if there's a reason to have it, I'm totally open to it. I was just trying to understand what we were trying to solve for. But that if we'd like to have this, I'm very open to it. If it's helpful, also especially to you, Tara, then if it's helpful for you to have this from us, I think that's a good reason to have something.
So I want to move on to the continued conversation around this, because it might be helpful. There was also a request for how we're going to communicate with counsel. So the proposal is for direct email, and I'm assuming a phone call is also okay, to counsel, followed by a staff email to all 5 commissioners. So this speaks to some of the questions that were coming up before. My understanding, and Tara, you could clarify this, is that whatever I request of counsel, they're going to provide advice to all 5 commissioners. Am I understanding that correctly, Tara?
So that's part of the instructions that we were asking for, the parameters. We represent the commission, and this is an unusual body in that there isn't a hierarchy. So usually the parameters are established by the head of the agency, but here, because there's a requirement for agreement and consensus, we just wanted to have a little bit of instruction going forward, whether if someone is asking for something that is commission business, and so well within the framework of what we would work on, whether you all agreed that those communications should be sent to all commissioners, or if there are certain, because the privilege would be held by the commission in general. And so we're just looking for a little bit more instruction given the unique nature of this body. If that makes sense, if anybody's got any additional questions, I'm happy to discuss. Some of this is, I don't want to venture into privileged discussions, so I'm keeping it fairly general.
I do have a quick question about privilege in general, Madam Chair.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
So, and I'm just trying to relate it back to my service in the legislature. Certainly there may be times when an individual legislator, or in this case, an individual commissioner, has a legal question about something, and I can't fathom what that might be right now, but about election law, about something where they are looking for some legal guidance in the furtherance of the negotiation over drawing the map, and so and just like in the furtherance of drafting a piece of legislation, and that there would be an expectation of confidentiality, even if it wasn't privilege. It would be an expectation of confidentiality separate from a privilege conversation. And I don't know if those kind of conversations have occurred in the past. They certainly occur on a daily basis in the legislature. So I don't know if that type of a conversation would be appropriate, if that type of confidentiality would be appropriate. So I throw that out there as a question to you, Tara, and appreciate us walking through these things ahead of actually dealing with any of these issues.
So
and that's a great question, and one we'd want to. sorry, Commissioner Augustine.
No,
I just wanted to say that that's one that I would like to look into a little bit further because of the unique nature of this body. Generally, the privilege is held by the commission itself. And so I, as a legal representative, would not have the ability to not disclose or not share or maintain confidentiality as between commissioners. But I would like to look at that a little more specifically and just see what parameters I could operate under.
so how about this? How about if I work with Tara to devise a proposal for your consideration, and we can move it to our next meeting as a discussion item so that we can fully discuss that proposal, and we wouldn't necessarily need to take action on it. And so just a note, because this is a special meeting, as you know, we can only take action on action items, not discussion items. However, once we have a committee schedule and we can actually, we can submit our agenda 5 days before our meeting as we're required to do, then we have a little more flexibility. If it's a discussion item, we would be able to vote on it if we're ready. We can't do that today, but we could do that in a regularly scheduled meeting. So just a note about process there. So if I develop with Tara and staff a proposal that we could bring to you for discussion, if it's a regularly scheduled meeting, if you feel comfortable moving it for a vote at that time, we could do that. How does that sound? Would you be open to myself developing a proposal with Tara that we could then fully discuss in another meeting? And so beginning with Commissioner Graves.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Great. Commissioner Walkinshaw.
Agree.
Terrific. Commissioner Fain.
Sounds good.
Okay. Commissioner Sims.
Agree.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we are moving through our agenda. Our final issue for discussion today is parameters for billing time. And so the RCW 44.04.70 item 4 states members shall receive $100 of compensation for each day spent in the performance of their duties. There's a request by one of the commissioners to establish norms for compensation, because that's very vague. Our guidance in the RCW is quite vague. And so my question is, are you willing to discuss setting some norms about how, what we mean by a day spent in the performance of their duties? This is just an opportunity for discussion, but it would be a good opportunity to hear proposals if we wanted to form agreement about that. And then when might we take action? So that is to say, when we would put it on an agenda where we could then vote on that if we wanted to vote about an item like this. So I'm going to begin with Commissioner Walkinshaw. Just your thoughts about parameters for billing time.
Sure. No, that's great. I mean, I think it's unique this year that you have four commissioners who are, none of us are retired. We're all working professionals at various jobs. I agreed with the proposals that were brought into the legislature last year that were really focusing on trying to professionalize the commission and create, kind of similar to our part-time legislature, compensation for commissioners during, even at a very modest level, compensation for commissioners to help professionalize the commission into the future. So 2030 is an awfully long ways away, but I hope that in 2031, when this is being done, that the legislature will have passed legislation that would help to kind of professionalize the role of being a commissioner. So I think where that's led me with this proposal is I personally interpret that as being kind of any time spent on commission business, whether that's, even if it's Commissioner Fain or I speaking about an issue, or Commissioner Sims or I speaking about an issue. I think that to me qualifies as a day spent on commission business, but I'm also really open-minded on this. It's very similar, I would say, to how we took how per diems have worked in the state legislature, is how I read it.
Thank you, Commissioner Walkinshaw. Commissioner Fain, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any real strong preferences here. I want to make sure that whatever it is, it's completely in line with precedents that have been set through other commission exercises, because there are many that that have a similar setup. And so again, I don't feel strongly one way or the other.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sims.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that we're having this conversation. And I think I'll just echo what Commissioner Walkinshaw said about, previous legislation to more professionalize the work that we do, and the added, I think, time commitment that we're all making as commissioners to this work. I know you, Commissioner Augustine, have put in a number of hours just preparing the agenda for our meeting. And I think, I would interpret the language in the law the same way, that time spent is time spent on the work, and it should be billed appropriately and accordingly.
Okay, Commissioner Graves.
I don't have strong feelings. We should have something that's clear and written that everybody can refer to. And I think it would be a good idea if some of those rules were based on rules that other commissions that tend to meet as often as we do have in place.
All right, terrific. So I'm going to make a proposal for your consideration. If I could work with staff, and by staff, I mean your staff, commissioners, because as you know, I don't have any staff until we hire staff. If I could work with your staff to develop a proposal that we could bring forward to you then for discussion. And by that, I mean, once again, if it's a regularly scheduled meeting, if you're ready to take action on it, we then could. So we could have it as a discussion item and then take action as appropriate. Are you open to that? So I can reach out to your staff and we can work together to develop something. Okay, so I'm seeing nods from everyone. Commissioner Fain, I can't see you on my screen. Are you open?
I'm the guy that said sounds good.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. All right, terrific. So now we are going to move on to the public comment portion of our meeting at the request of the commissioners before we move into our action items. So I'm just going to skip ahead to our public comment instructions. So in the meeting agenda, I was really specific about the time that we were going to hold public comment. So we're going to begin public comment closer to 10:20 than 10:45. And so hopefully those folks who signed up to comment publicly are available to do so. So I'm going to give you some instructions about public comment. And I want to do this so that those people who are joining us from the public have a really clear idea about what's going to happen next. Let's see if I can. I'm just going to read these instructions. So those of you who are planning to provide public comment today, you're going to click or tap the link included in the Zoom instructions. So keep in mind, that's not a link that can be shared. It's specific to you. If the meeting has not yet opened for attendees to join, you'll see the following message. Please wait for the host to start this webinar. Well, we've started, so that wouldn't be the case. Once you've joined the meeting, you will be in the attendee view, which is where you all are now. You will be able to adjust your microphone and speaker by clicking the upward arrow next to audio settings. So I've moved my view in the PowerPoint so I can fully read all of the instructions. When it's your turn to testify, the chair will call your name. So I'm going to call your name actually in groups of 3, so that you are going to be able to move out of sort of the gallery view and become a panelist. At this time, you will transition to the panelist view, where you will be given permission to speak. During this transition, your Zoom window will briefly disappear and indicate it is rejoining the meeting. So please don't exit the meeting or panic at that time. It's really just a brief moment. Once you've rejoined the meeting as a panelist, audio and visual controls will display in the lower left corner of your screen. To change to gallery view, please change to gallery view to see the testimony timer. And if you're on a desktop or laptop, the view icon is in the upper right-hand corner of the window. And please select gallery view. If you are on a phone or tablet, swipe left from the active speaker view to change to gallery to view the testimony timer. And click the start video button and unmute to begin speaking to the commission. So I am going to call your names in groups of 3. You're going to enter the panelist view. I will let you know when it's your turn to speak. You will have 1 minute to speak. I recognize that 1 minute is not adequate time for you likely to share everything you have to share. And so I really encourage you to submit your comment in writing to me. You can send it to comment@redistricting.wa.gov. So please feel free to send in written comment. However, we do want to hear your testimony as well. When your minute has ended, what will happen at that time is that you will be on mute and you will go back to the gallery view. Okay, Commissioner Walkinshaw.
Thank you, Commissioner Augustine. I just had a question for you as we get into public comment at 10:20. If at the end of some of these discussion items, when you've done the recap, if we disagree, if we didn't quite agree with how you'd wrapped up one of the conversations, can I flag that, or is there a way I can come back to that later in the agenda?
You bet. And I would, do you want to do that now, Commissioner, or do you?
I can wait if you're diving into public comment. I just wanted to clarify one comment around the response to the letter that I just wanted to clarify a comment that I made.
You bet. So I would be happy to do that. And if you don't mind taking a minute, why don't we do that now, just so that I won't forget it at the end. I want to make sure that we include it.
Okay. Oh no, I'm happy to. No, I just wanted to clarify. I think the code of conduct is absolutely critical, but I don't see that as a response to the letter. I think that my personal perspective is that we as a commission absolutely need to issue a code of conduct. I don't think that's responding to and addressing the issues which were brought up in the letter entirely. Speaking personally, I've already actually made a public comment on my own response to the letter, which was my perspective. I won't go into reading it right now, but I've already made a statement in response to the letter. So I absolutely think that we should adopt a code of conduct, but I don't think that I wouldn't see that as a response to the letter, if that makes sense. So that's my own perspective.
Okay, thank you for clarifying your position on that. Okay, so moving into the public comment, I'm going to read your names, those people who are ready to make public comment. I'm just reading them in the order in which you signed up to make public comment. And so at that time, Sean is going to transition you to the panelist view. So the first 3 names are Jerry Hebert, Jeffrey Robinson, and Carrie Barnes. All right, when you're ready and in the appropriate view, Jerry, you have 1 minute to speak. Please unmute. There you go.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it immensely. I am going to submit a written statement to you, Commissioner Augustine, after I complete here, so I'm just going to summarize. My name is Reverend Dr. Jerry Hebert, and in the interest of public disclosure, I am a vice chair of the Kitsap County Democratic Central Committee, but I am here on my personal interest rather than speaking for the Democrats. I'm requesting of the commissioner that the commission take steps to ensure the integrity of this commission, and that any cloud of question or concern about the integrity or the ability of an individual that's a commissioner to serve the people of the state means investigating any and all situations that may impugn the integrity of any member of this organization. So I request that we have a public hearing on the issues at hand concerning Commissioner Fine.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey Robinson.
Thank you. I'm a little nervous. Hi, I'm Jeffrey Robinson, and I have to be honest with you, I'm excited for the commission, but what I heard today really bothers me. I am a sexual assault survivor. I have to live with that every damn day. And to have someone who is credibly accused of that on a commission that I'm supposed to trust as an Eastern Washingtonian, where the only person with from Eastern Washington doesn't even get to vote on the final outcomes of the map. By the way, Madam Chair, you're doing an awesome job. Is very frustrating to me. And I have to be honest with you, I did not appreciate some of the comments equating the caucus, the Women's National Caucus, to a political organization. No, they're trying to stand up for those of us who aren't going to get a forum to explain to you how frightening it is when someone who's credibly accused of something that terrifying is able to sit and be elevated in a higher position. I don't know the person involved, but I can tell you right now, this is very frightening and discomforting for me. So I hope that you take it more seriously and balance your comments a little bit more before you make some of them.
Thank you. Next is Carrie Barnes.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank everyone who is on this call today, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a participant. And taking the lead from Jerry, I am also here on my own personal, as my own personal voice. I am currently a vice chair. However, in speaking to you, this is from a personal perspective. And two things. The first one that I wanted my public voice to be made is not only is it imperative to have a code of conduct. We have one for Washington State. We have one for our senators and our legislative body. In reading the press reports, what is super important is an accusation, allegedly, that it gets investigated. That is super important, especially for my children, to see that our officials that are appointed are also held to a higher standard, and that does include an investigation.
Thank you. All right, the next three people who will come forward are Jeffrey Olson, Willie Russell, and Jay Jennings. So Carrie, I'm sorry that you were cut off. Please do submit your comment in writing. All right, so when you are ready, Jeffrey Olson. Jeffrey Olson, are you here? All right, let's move on to Willie Russell.
Willie Russell is not present, Chair.
Great, thank you. And then Jay Jennings, I recognize that you are staff and you have your hand raised. Is it your intention to publicly make comment today?
No, I'm just observing. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All
I'm
right.
here. Jeff Olson's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Great. So we're ready to listen when you're ready.
Okay, I am a retired federal employee. I've been studying the redistricting in Spokane County, and there is one problem that needs to be addressed, and that is not using other county maps. Case in point, Cheney School District has 2 precincts in the 9th. Freeman School District, which is mainly in the 9th, has a couple districts in the 6th. It would make more sense if you keep the school districts together and not split them up. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comment. Next, I'm going to list the next 3 names of people who have signed up to make comment today. Thomas Dooley, Jan Robinson, and Orville Lawrence. So when you're ready, Thomas, we're ready to hear your comment. Thomas, I don't see you on my screen yet, but I do see Jan Robinson. Jan, are you ready?
I might be. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we're ready.
I think this is a really important issue to address. If someone has been credibly accused of a serious crime and attack on persons, I really think that the commission needs to address it. They need to say whether that's an appropriate commissioner for the panel. Those are my comments, and I just want to say I'm from Anacortes, Washington.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to make comment today. Thomas Dooley, are you here?
Jan was the only one from that panel, Commissioner.
Great, thank you. So the next three folks are Julie Anderson, Melissa Taylor, and Chris Porter. So Julie Anderson, are you here? I see you on my screen, Julie Anderson. When you're ready, we're ready to hear your comment. So Julie Anderson, I wonder if you are able to hear me. Sean, are you, I can see Julie Anderson and Melissa Taylor.
Sheriff, I would ask them to see if they can try to turn on their video and audio. If not, I would move on to.
Okay, great. So Julie Anderson, could you please turn on your video and unmute yourself? If you're able to turn on your video, if not, that's okay, but you will need to unmute yourself to give testimony. All right, I'll come back to you. Melissa Taylor, I can see you. And so we look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. In 2010, not a single state or federal incumbent was redistricted into a district with another, in some cases requiring significant contortions of district boundaries. Many of the incumbents who were protected from healthy democratic competition are no longer even serving. I want to urge you to place democracy and the voters of Washington state at the center of your deliberations, completely absent consideration of the residential addresses of current incumbents. Next, as it relates to staff selection and direction, research from the CDC estimates that 1 in 3 women will experience completed or attempted rape during her lifetime. I am one of them. There is no way to have a fair, equitable, or appropriate process for hiring or managing staff while you have an alleged rapist as a city commissioner. The message this sends to survivors about whose safety and comfort will be prioritized in this state is appalling. My only criticism of the petition request is that it does not go far enough. The petition to limit staff access and review communications for ethics compliance is the least that you can do.
Thank you, Melissa Taylor. We appreciate your comment. I'm sorry you were cut off. Please do submit your comments to me in writing. So I'm going to return once more to Julie Anderson. Are you able to unmute and provide comment? Okay, so moving on to Chris Porter. Are you present?
Chris Porter is not present, Chair.
Great. So the final two folks who have signed up to testify today are Bridget O'Brien and Tina Podlowski. So Bridget, I can see you in my screen. When you're ready, we look forward to hearing your comment. Bridget O'Brien.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. My name's Bridget O'Brien. I am a constituent of the 43rd Legislative District in Seattle. I am here today to echo the concerns of the National Women's Political Caucus letter, and hopefully also maybe clarify the ask that was put forth to the commission in that letter. There seems to be some confusion here, which, to be quite honest, seems a little disingenuous to me from some of the commissioners. The ask is not simply to put forth a strong code of conduct. The subject that people seem to be kind of dancing around is that of the fact that one of your members has been credibly accused of sexual assault. And the ask is not that commissioners not have access to their colleagues or the public, but that they have no in-person access, which speaks directly to the specifics of people feeling safe.
Thank you, Bridget O'Brien, for your comment, and I'm sorry you were cut off. Please do submit your comments in writing. Thank you. And finally, Tina Podlowski, we're ready when you're ready to share with us.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and I appreciate this opportunity to testify. I'm testifying as an individual today, not on behalf of any organization. I am also one of 3 women in the United States who is a sexual assault survivor, and it is extremely unsettling to have somebody who's credibly accused of sexual assault serving as a commissioner, and want to echo the words of Bridget that there is an ask here for a code of conduct, as well as behavior to ensure safety of anyone who's working with a commissioner who's been credibly accused. One of the commissioners said that if we didn't have to have a response to the letter, I would have to say the silence speaks volumes. And for the commission to be viewed as credible in putting forth a plan that has implications for everyone in their political future, there needs to be volume spoken, not silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so we are now going to move out of the public comment period. And for those people who shared with us today, I want to voice my thanks. Thanks for spending part of your Sunday with us. Please do, you're invited to observe the rest of our meeting together today. I am now going to summarize what I've heard from the public comment. I do this simply so that those people who gave their time in bringing their concerns forward understand that we are listening and want to make sure that you know that you were heard. So here's, I took notes. Thank you for your patience as I read through my notes here. So what I've heard, and these are the underlying interests I heard from folks, that you would like and you expect that public officials are held to a higher standard of integrity. And you also would like to ensure that there's safety for our staff and for the public. And so concerning maps, you would like for us to not use other county maps. You want for us to focus on democracy at the center of decisions and not on the residence of incumbents. And so those are the things that I heard today. Of course, this meeting is recorded. And so it is my intention in every meeting where we have public comment to bring the interest that I heard to the next meeting, to keep in the minds of the commission what we've heard and how we can respond to those items that it's within our mandate to respond for items for which we have and we can take an official response. So thank you. I would now like to move to the next item on our agenda, which is to our action items. So I'm going to return to my my PowerPoint. Okay, so the first item for our, that I hope we can take action on today is approval for our interagency agreement. So for each action that we consider today, I will ask that one of you make a motion and then another second the motion. I'll provide an opportunity for discussion, and finally, I will call for a vote. So let's begin with the approval for the interagency agreement. This agreement is between the House, the Senate, and the Commission. The purpose is to provide the House and Senate expenditure of funds pending the hire of an executive director. The action on this item is important because there are expenditures that we face, and we don't want to wait until we have a full hired staff in order to expend these funds. So I've shared with you on this slide some of the financial needs that it would be good to take care of some of these things in the near term before we're able to fully hire staff. So you can see there's an amount there in excess of $70,000. So my first question, is there a motion to approve the interagency agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there items for discussion? All right, so let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I want to make sure that I heard from all of you. I heard from Commissioner Graves and Sims, Commissioner Walkinshaw and Fain.
Aye. Aye.
Great, thank you. So the minutes will reflect that the interagency agreement has been approved. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the executive director job announcement. So the approval of this job announcement is crucial so that we can begin staffing up and fully engage in the work of the commission. So what I'm going to do now is share, briefly share that job description. This job description has been routed for your review. It's been revised, and questions about this item, the announcement for executive director. First, are there questions?
I do have a question. You, Madam Chair, you mentioned that it's been revised. Can you let us know what the revisions were?
Yes. So originally we used as a template the announcement from 10 years ago. Staff added in the salary range. There were some items that were moved from required qualifications to desirable qualifications to ensure that we would have the greatest possible potential of candidates that, you know, to make sure that we would have the best possible pool. I do want to note that I didn't make any revisions to this job posting. The commissioners did. So this would be a good opportunity for commissioners if you want to share what revisions you made, if any. And so I'll begin with Commissioner Sims. Are there revisions you'd like to share?
Yes, thank you. I think that the bulk of the revisions were just around the things that you identified, adding the salary range, including information encouraging women, people of color, members of the LGBTQI community to apply. And I think, you know, moving around required qualifications and eliminating some language around desirable qualifications, just to make sure that we were able to recruit as broad a talent pool as possible.
Okay, great. Commissioner Graves, did you make any corrections or adjustments to this job posting?
Oh, no, I did not. I thought it looked really terrific. Thanks to you and to the staff for getting this thing revised from last time and for making those kind of changes.
You bet. Commissioner Walkinshaw, are there revisions you'd want to share?
No, nothing from me. I agree with, I think it looks great. No comments. Look forward to having a wonderful person fill the position.
Great. Commissioner Fain, any comments or revisions you made to the job posting?
Looks great.
All right, terrific. So now I will ask, is there a motion to approve the job posting?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Any items for discussion? All right. Those in favor of approval? Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Sims.
Thank you. Yeah, it just occurs to me, and I probably should have caught this before, but I wonder if the rest of the commission would be interested in adding just a line about, some direct experience working in diverse or marginalized communities to the list of desirable qualifications.
As the maker of the motion, I'd have no objection to adding that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you, Commissioner Graves, reopen to that amendment?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, Commissioner Walkinshaw, are you open to that amendment? Okay, great. All right, so all in favor of adopting this posting with that amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so the job announcement is adopted. Thank you. All right, I am going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so the next item today in our action item is to develop a commission schedule. So this is an important item to me as chair. An important part of our mandate is to include the public in our work. In order to fully and effectively embody transparency, it's important that we establish a schedule of regular meetings. We have many important decisions to make and items to discuss as we hire staff and respond to a context where access to data will be significantly delayed, and we will want to be proactive in how we engage the public in a meaningful way given this context. I would like to propose that we meet weekly until we are able to hire an executive director. Because this is a process issue, I feel empowered to make this proposal. For this time, I will first ask that you agree or disagree with this proposal. And if you disagree, I'll ask for alternate proposals. And I'm going to ask you to take turns commenting until there is an alternate proposal upon which we can vote. I recognize that weekly meetings feels like a heavy lift. It doesn't need to be forever, maybe for 6 weeks until we can establish some things, because we need to be making decisions pretty quickly in the coming weeks. Do you agree with the proposal to meet weekly? Beginning with Commissioner Walkinshaw.
I'm curious what my fellow commissioners think. I have thought maybe it would be good for us to have a standing monthly meeting and then call for more frequent meetings as we need them for specific orders of business. But I also want to be supportive of you, Commissioner Augustine, as we're getting off the ground for process. So I'm open to doing that for the start if that's helpful. But I'm curious what others think.
Great. Commissioner Fain?
I agree with Commissioner Walkinshaw. I think a standing monthly meeting and then additional meetings called for special purposes if we've got an issue pending before us. I think one of the questions would be, when is the earliest that we would be reviewing the applications for executive director and making that decision? And that probably is one of our next meetings that we would need to get scheduled. But I also want to make sure that we're not scheduling meetings for the sake of scheduling meetings, because there's a lot of actual numbers and additional work that needs to be done as part of this process that doesn't occur always in the meetings.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioner Sims?
Yeah, I'll just echo what's been said so far, but I think the question that I have is this what you need from us as your fellow commissioners is a weekly meeting until the executive director is scheduled? Is that what I'm understanding? This is what you feel like you need from us?
That's right, and I want to explain why. Scheduling this meeting was no picnic. And what I don't want to do is spend a lot of time trying to schedule meetings. So what I'm really proposing is that we would have a weekly meeting, a short meeting. It could be 30 or 40 minutes weekly. And we could say for 6 weeks, for 4 weeks, for 6 weeks, just so that we can get some business done. And then we can have a standing monthly meeting. Because scheduling the meetings is challenging. And as you know, I don't have any staff.
So even I think given that, I'm in agreement. I think no one's a fan of meeting for the sake of meetings, but if this is what you need from me to feel supported in this work until we have an executive director, then I'm willing to meet weekly for as long as you feel we need to.
Thank you. Commissioner Graves?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Beyond hiring an executive director and approving a code of conduct, is there other business that you have in mind?
Yes, the biggest piece of business from my point of view, beyond hiring staff, is beginning to outline a process for engaging the public, given that we have a window of time between now and the release of the census data. How do we want to use that time? Because we may be quite truncated in our ability to hold meaningful public comment periods once we have that data. So I really want to outline that process, and I think that's going to take some good discussion. And we will also want to come up with a response. How are we going to best use our time as we respond to some context around the data being available much later than we anticipated?
Okay. Yeah, weekly just seems, we all have a lot of meetings. It just seems like a lot, but maybe we could, I'm totally sympathetic with trying to get a group like this scheduled, and we're here at Sunday morning from 9 to 11. Is there a way, and maybe this is a question for Tara, is there a way that we could have a time held on our calendars, and then we can decide? I know we need like 5 days notice, but then we can, decide ahead of time if there's a particular discussion we need to have or an agenda item, and then cancel it if we end up deciding that we don't need to do it.
Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate that, those questions. And so one thing we could do, I mean, here are my thoughts to the comments the 4 of you have put forward. We could schedule a regular meeting that would be monthly. We could call a special meeting, and we know we're going to have one every week. And then if we don't need it, I would cancel it. But I would like for you to hold that time because we will have many items on our agenda in the coming weeks. I want to review a few of those with you today. It's the last item on our agenda, just so that you know what items are on my list, and I can hear from you additional items. There's quite a lot. So what do you think, how would you feel about that? We have a scheduled regular meeting that's monthly, then we know we're going to have special meetings in the coming weeks.
I'd be okay with that. And I'd especially be okay with trying to pick a time that we can just all hold and have on our calendar. I'm totally sympathetic to that. So if we can do that, and then try to decide, each week whether we need to have it or not, that I'd be in favor of that.
Great. Okay, so Commissioner Walkinshaw?
I would agree. And what I also am hearing you say, Commissioner Augustine, is that particularly at the beginning, it would be helpful to have weekly. So if, I feel okay also doing weekly for the next few weeks as we get going, but maybe we'll fall back to a monthly plus public engagement, which will probably be happening in addition to that in in some way as we design that. So I would support where we're headed.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Fain.
I think that's a good plan moving forward. Again, I think we all agree that whatever it is that you think you need to get off on the right foot through this process is something that we will work our schedules around accommodating.
Thank you. And Commissioner Sims?
That works for me.
All right, so I now want to, I know that it's inconvenient, but I want to go through the tedious process of at least trying to identify a day that that is the best day and potentially time. I can work out the details with staff, but it would be helpful if we could at least get on board with it with a block of time when I know you're all available. That would be terrific. So I'm now just going to start calling out days. How are Mondays for you generally? And let's just go in this order for every one of these questions. Sims, Graves, Walkinshaw, Fain. How are Mondays for you, Commissioner Sims?
Just doing a quick look here. Just give me a quick second.
You bet.
Monday afternoons are doable.
Great.
Not-
How about evening? Is evening Monday okay?
Are we looking at evening times?
Anytime. It's completely up to you.
Yeah, Monday evenings look pretty good.
So afternoon, evening, Monday is okay for you. Okay, Commissioner Graves?
They're spotty. I wonder if, are we allowed to do this by a doodle? It just seems like it'd be maybe the easiest way to do this. And if we can't, most of my days are kind of hit or miss. But I could probably, if we pick a time, pick one, and I'll add on there that my kids go to bed at 7 o'clock. So anytime after that, if you want to do 7 to 9, I don't love it, but I'm not opposed to it.
Okay, so an evening meeting is okay for you. Yes, we can absolutely do doodle. What happened last time is there was nothing that overlapped for everybody. So I just was constantly making calls and emails trying to figure it out. So I'm just trying to identify a time. And because we're trying to schedule a regular meeting, then it would just always be blocked out on your calendar. This is the time when we're going to have this regular meeting. So sounds like afternoon and evenings are okay. Let me just ask it this way. Are there days that are not ideal? We are meeting on a Sunday morning from 9 to 11 this time. I hope that's not the only time we can all meet together.
I'm not sure if that was a question directly for me. I will say that the one day for me is Thursday, are always terrible.
No Thursday. Okay. So others, Commissioner Walkinshaw, any day that you would like to exclude?
I like late afternoons and evenings, and I can make anything. I can kind of make anything work. If we do weekends, I actually prefer the time slot we're in.
Yep. Okay. So if it's a weekday, we want late afternoon, evening, and if it's a weekend, morning's better. Okay. Commissioner Fain, any days that you would like to exclude?
No, I think what Commissioner Walkinshaw suggested is probably what fits my calendar best as well.
Great, terrific. Commissioner Sims, any day you would like to exclude?
I'm just going to put in a plug for no more Sunday morning meetings unless absolutely necessary.
Second.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and this tedious time of trying to come up with the time. And I'll be in touch with your staff. And hopefully on Monday, we will have the time for our next meeting. So thank you very much for your flexibility. At this point, let me just make sure that I know what I'm doing here. I don't misspeak. At this time, oh, I know what I have to do. I want to tell you, we have action items for our next agenda, and those are listed in the agenda. So these are just items that I'm aware of. We need to develop a public outreach plan. We know there will be a delay in the census data, and I would like to make a request for NCSL to brief us on that. We have received a request from the Colville Nation at the time this agenda was posted, but we have subsequently received additional requests for people who want to consult with us about redistricting prior to receiving census data. So those are the items that I know of, and I want to articulate that this is not your only chance to add agenda items. I'll send you each a request for agenda items and a proposed agenda for our next meeting before it's posted. So you can add agenda items until the time we post the agenda. And so at this time, it was my intention to call for agenda items. We can do that. I see that we have just 3 minutes left. We can handle it on email, and I'll make sure that that the future agendas are posted. So if that's okay with you, we can just handle our next agenda in that manner. So Commissioner Graves, you look confused, but I'm saying we can handle it on email. It's okay?
Sorry, that's totally fine. I got myself zoned out for a second. I was definitely not what you were saying.
Commissioner Graves, does that work for you? Commissioner Sims, does that work for you? And great, thank you. Commissioner Walkinshaw and Commissioner Fain.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. And so at this time, I would like to adjourn, and I want to thank each of you commissioners for your service and for your time and attention today. Yes, Commissioner Sims.
I just have a point of personal privilege. I just want to thank you, Commissioner Augustine, for stepping in to this position as our chair, and commend you for your skills and helping to facilitate our discussion and run our meeting today. I had the privilege of chairing our first commission meeting, which I think was a much lighter lift than your work today. Also recognizing that you don't have staff until the executive director is hired, and just want to commend you for your work and all your effort. And thank you for joining our team here.
Thank you. I also want to thank staff who have made this possible, including Sean and Bernard and Tara, Brad, Allie, Anton, Paul, Jessica, thank you for taking minutes today, Osta, and all of the staff who've chosen to spend your time on a Sunday morning with us. Thank you. I commend you. And thank you, commissioners, for your service and your time. And this meeting is adjourned.